Paradise market, we had 71 homes that closed in quarter one of 2026, and that's actually a big increase. That's actually 14 more homes closing compared to the first quarter of 2025, and that's actually a 25% increase in the number of homes that had closed. And we've stayed at a low level of inventory over the last 3 or 4 months in the Paradise market. So ultimately a big change up on the ridge there with it. So far, we saw roughly a small decrease in Chico. We saw a pretty big increase in Oroville market, and we saw a giant increase in the number of homes that closed in the Paradise market, with the inventory levels mostly staying the same, except for the Paradise market had that. Hello and welcome back. I'm Keith Fickert, and together with my wife Alicia, we're the Fickert Team Real Estate. And today I'm here to talk to you about quarter one 2026 and compare that to quarter one of 2025 and give you a market update of what's been happening and what has changed over the last year. And I'm going to dive into 3 markets to do that. I'm going to go over the Chico market, the Oroville market, and the Paradise market. That being said, I've got the Chico market pulled up on the MLS right here. And as you can see, for quarter one in 2026, we had 149 homes closed in Chico. And that's actually 5 less than what closed in quarter one of 2025, and so we had a slight decrease of 3% less homes that closed in 2026 in quarter one. Let's pop over to the inventory levels to see what the Chico inventory levels have looked like as well. As you can see, for Chico's inventory, we roughly had about 2.5 months worth of inventory on the market in March so far in 2026. And that's actually a pretty low level. That would be considered a seller's market because it's such a low level of inventory. And if we go back to last year in March, we roughly had the same level. We had about 2.2 months worth of inventory on the market, both low levels of inventory. And what we see seasonally, typically in most markets, is we see a swell of inventory as more homes get listed in the spring and summer months, and then ultimately less people are listing their homes going into the fall and winter months, and that starts to decrease. So all normal seasonality that we see in the market typically, and a very low level for Chico. Now let's pop back over to the MLS and let's go ahead and check the Oroville market. All right, for Oroville, we saw 67 homes that closed in quarter one of 2026, and that's actually a pretty big increase. That's an increase of 9 homes closed in 2026 for quarter one compared to the previous year's quarter, and that's a big increase of 16%. So we're seeing double-digit growth in the Oroville market, which is pretty significant. Let's go ahead and pop in and see what the inventory levels have also done in Oroville.
Thinking about relocating to Chico, California? Well, I've got just the thing for you. My team and I had taken the time to create the ultimate relocation guide, which is to save you hours of research, and I have linked it below. From the top employers to the best hospitals and a boatload of other things that you need to know before making the move. The best part of all of this is 100% free. You heard me right, it's 100% free. Just click the link in the description or the top pinned comment. I hope that helps.
All right, so looking at the inventory levels, roughly in the March range, we had about 5 months worth of inventory on the market. That's more of a neutral market where it's kind of even leverage between buyers and sellers. And ultimately, if we go back a year, we see that last year around March, we had 6 months of inventory. So ultimately, there's actually less inventory right now in Oroville than there was in the previous year with it. Minor difference, it's not a huge difference. And then we saw that seasonal swell we talked about of more listings, and then that start to drop off, which is normal in the winter months. So a slight decrease in inventory, but a pretty big increase in the number of homes selling in Oroville. Lastly, we are going to check the Paradise market. All right, the Paradise market, we had 71 homes that closed in quarter one of 2026, and that's actually a big increase. That's actually 14 more homes closing compared to the first quarter of 2025, and that's actually a 25% increase in the number of homes that had closed. Ultimately, that's a big shift. We're seeing a big increase in the number of homes closing up on the ridge there with it. We're starting to see the population come back, and that's a pretty big shift in the market. Let's go ahead and see what the inventory levels are doing up there. All right, so if you go to March here, you can see there's roughly about 3.5 months worth of inventory in Paradise on the market. As we talked about for Chico, that's a low level, right? We're starting to get into a seller's market there because it's an inventory crunch. There's not a huge amount on the market. If we go back to last year with it, we roughly were sitting at about 4.5 months of inventory. So that's about 2 months less of inventory, which is a pretty significant shift over that 12-month period. As you can see, we had a swell normal going up into the end of the summer, and then a pretty sharp decrease in the winter time. And we've stayed at a low level of inventory over the last 3 or 4 months in the Paradise market. So ultimately a big change up on the ridge there with it. So far we saw roughly a small decrease in Chico. We saw a pretty big increase in Oroville market, and we saw a giant increase in the number of homes that closed in the Paradise market, with the inventory levels mostly staying the same, except for the Paradise market had that big drop off in inventory so far in the first quarter. Ultimately, if you are curious what your home might be worth in the current market, please reach out to us. You can either DM us, you can leave a comment here on our YouTube channel, or you can shoot a text over to us. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.